Kia ora, everyone, and welcome to 2025, the first Techbytes podcast of the year. We're coming to you. January's gone. This is February. We're really rocking and rolling through the year. Today, I'm really thrilled to be chatting with someone I really respect and have and thoroughly enjoy working with. It's Annaliese Atina. Good to talk to you, Annaliese. And I know you're incredibly busy with this big role you have at one of our iconic companies, Ford New Zealand, here in our Aotearoa. Would you mind introducing yourself a little and a bit about your description of what your role is?
Yeah, absolutely. So, morena, kia ora koutou, everyone. Ko Annaliese Atina taka ingoa, ko takamahi, ko te Managing Director, ko te Ford Motor Company New Zealand. Thanks for having me. It's great to be first off the block this year. And you're also very inspiring for me as well, Craig. So it's also great to be working with you. It's a little bit about my role. I'm very privileged to lead, as to your point, one of the most iconic companies in the world, Ford. My role here really is to ensure that I apply really great governance to this business so that we can continue to be here in New Zealand or Aotearoa for another 100 years. So simply if I kind of rounded up to that, I'd say that there's obviously a lot of things underneath to make sure that our team are thriving and winning, to ensure we've got great products that Kiwis love, that we're always thinking about how customers resonate with our brands and challenging ourselves to think, much more richer in that space. But most importantly, actually, to make sure our dealer network of 55 dealerships across New Zealand and 27 individual ownership models continue to thrive for the couple of thousand employees that they employ. So, yeah, a bit about me.
Oh, and I think, you and I have had this conversation around technology and the use of technology. I
Mm.
mean, it's a classic example of an organization that, needs technology to be able to meet the challenges of today. I mean, your cars are smart. You've got to be smart
Yeah.
across the whole organization. But look, these conversations about you as a person as well. So let's go back to the beginning. What was school like for you? And did you know what you wanted to do after you finished there?
I'm going to be absolutely honest on this response. So, I didn't love school. Uh, for a number of different reasons. I think the way probably I taught and the way that I fitted in, it just wasn't for everyone, right? That back when I was at school, you kind of had a one box you fit in it, and that's how you roll through school. So I didn't love it, and in fact, I didn't love it so much that when it came to sixth form, which is now year 12, I actually dropped out of school. So I decided to go and get a job that I could be independent, and I went and worked in a factory for about a year and then realized that that's not what I wanted to do forever. And went back and actually did a course at a technology institute around hospitality and kind of front office reception and hotel management. And that's kind of where my career, I guess you'd say, started. And it was all about people. And I just loved interacting with people. Loved it. You met people from all walks of life, and really everything I've done since then has been I'm happiest when I am working with people. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, that's fascinating, because leaving at year 12 means,
Mm.
you've made a choice to be out of there. So what does you've talked about hospitality, getting into
Mm.
that space. So what does the journey look like when you start at that point through to now when you're leading an iconic motor brand? I mean, there's got to be quite a story of how that progresses. And so can you tell us a
Yeah.
bit about how that progresses, but also talk about some of the important decision points that happened along the way and why you
Yeah.
made certain decisions?
Yeah, absolutely. Who would have thought working in front office reception of a hotel with absolutely no degree to running one of the largest companies in New Zealand? It definitely is a story. So I think the things I'd say is I haven't been a great planner about my career, but I've really known what my purpose is and the things that drive me. And I've really taken opportunities, not necessarily for the role that I have today, but where it will get me. And
Mm,
that's really been quite critical for me because I'm a real people person and I love, I'm okay with being uncomfortable in situations. I like to problem solve. That really does get me going because it's the outcome you get right. That's quite exciting as a result of it. I've always been like quite focused in that area. And so I don't know, I've always seemed to find opportunities where I've got great networks that open up doors for me. And I think that would probably be the key things I would say is my lessons in life to get me from working at a reception desk to the role that I'm sitting in today is to really back yourself, understand what your purpose, understand the things that drive you, what gets you excited every day. Every day is never a given, and I've certainly had a lot of adversity that's helped shape that for me during my lifetime. So I guess what you call key kind of signposts where you take a decision based on something that's quite dramatic that's happened. So I was a young mum with my eldest son Jaden. That was a moment for me to go, for him to look back, or for me to look back on life and decide whether I was just going to be a mum that wasn't achieving anything, or actually someone that was going to be a leadership role model in his life. That was a iconic decision for me to pivot and find something new to grow in. And I've had many of those. Recently in the last 5 years, my sister passed away. So I lost her suddenly. And that for me was a really big moment to go, actually, you know what, Annaliese, not every day is given. Are you making the most of every day? And are you taking the most of your opportunity? So I think it's probably a long way of saying I'm very inward, very reflective about the things that I choose. And I take life lessons quite seriously. But I generally say to everyone, know your purpose. What are the things that drive you? And where do you want to be? Where's your ambition? And who are the people that are going to help you get there?
It's interesting in our careers because, you and I both work with young people and ask the question about how your career develops. And you sort of look back and go, I'm really not quite sure sometimes. And then usually, right,
Yeah.
some decisions are forced upon you, and others, opportunities come your way. And so you've got to go look at it with an open mind and go, well, let's have a crack at that.
I think particularly in the world we live in today, that ability to have grit and resilience is going to be more of a necessity than it had been probably in a day where you kind of had a paint by numbers. You finished college, you went to university, you got a job in this, and you kind of went through the ranks, or you sat there if you weren't ambitious, right? So I think that has really changed these days. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about that leadership because you do lead. And, what are some of the key learnings that you've had over time in leadership that you wished you'd known earlier and that you'd want to share?
There's a real difference between management and leadership, would probably be the first thing I've learned. And sometimes like that the hard way. And when you really lean into leadership, it's really about galvanizing people's spirits, not just their head, but their heart, and really understanding the things that drive people, right? For me, that's quite critical. But even more critical is actually the vision you set and ensuring everyone is part of that. I think if you don't have a North Star as a leader, and if that's not clear in your head and you're not really clear around the key things, the enablers you need to get there, it's very hard to move a business forward. So I think, coming in every day and kind of managing performance versus setting a strategic direction and building the capability, the muscle to deliver that for me is a lesson, probably the biggest lesson I've learned over the last probably 10 years, I'd say.
It's interesting, is it? Yeah. There are certainly things also in your career where you go, gee, I wish I hadn't done that, or wish I hadn't said that, or that's a learning.
So many.
Yes, so many. People have to just realize that, yeah.
Yeah, so many, yeah.
I want to talk to you about a little bit further because you work for Ford, people know it as a motor company, but it has all sorts of elements to go with it. So let's talk about some specific issues in the tech space at the moment, which I know you're passionate about. We know from all sorts of research, so we have an issue around lack of skilled staff in all areas of technology, and I'm talking to a lot of CIOs at the moment for our annual report, and that staffing thing is coming up, even though we're in a situation where you'd think there's people around, there aren't necessarily the ones with the right skills. There's not enough women, Maori, there's not enough Pacifica. What sort of things do you think we could do to improve that situation?
Probably two things, I'd say. I've worked not just at Ford, but other iconic brands. The issue's still the same. And one of the key things that I see, well, two things. One of the key things I see is a real kind of ankle tap for a lot of organizations to move forward is we've got probably more so than ever, quite a few different generations within your workforce, right? So you've got your boomers all the way through. We've got not quite digital alphas coming in, but millennials, and their ability to use tech, consume it, know how it makes a difference to their jobs and drives productivity in a business is a real challenge for organizations. So I do see that as one of the areas that every organization, no matter which one I go into, we've got to help build that kind of capability across our baby boomers, across our Gen Xers, not less so our millennials. So we've got to figure out how we do that, because even with an organization I'm in today, that's a big, big opportunity for us for growth, to fast track growth across our business. And I think the second thing is when you look across not just the generational divide, I guess, that exists today, but then you look across, you know, our different ethnicities that we have. And as you know, I'm a very big advocate for Māori Pacifica within the digital workspace. That is a really big talent source that we really need to tap. And we just haven't tapped it. And that same thing goes for women. And as much as that generational ankle tap sits there, which is how do I best get these generations to work together and thrive? How do you do the same thing at the vertical, which is women, Māori Pacifica? And I think when all of those things, you know, and it's not paint by numbers, and it's just not one thing for all. It's a very different approach, I think, to that. So I think those are really big opportunities for business. And I definitely have some thoughts around how I see we could do that better as organizations. And also one of the key reasons that I put my hand up to be a member of TUANZ and sit on the board is because I don't necessarily bring the deep AI thinking like, you know, you do, but I certainly bring another level of thinking around, well, how do we unlock potential in New Zealand and Aotearoa?
Cool. So let's talk about that.
Yeah.
That other space that you're working in, which is a board member of TUANZ, and you know we're incredibly privileged and thankful to have you as part of the governance of our organisation, and seeing your passion for the mahi we do. You know, can you talk a little bit more about why you put your name in the ring for election, and what role do you think an organisation like TUANZ actually plays in today's world?
Yeah, so probably the two reasons. TUANZ represents a couple of areas that I'm super passionate about, being small business, Aotearoa, and also obviously some of these other, you know, culture areas that we really want to grow. So I think for me, my rationale or my passion was that it's such a broad coverage around who TUANZ represents, right? So it's not just the large businesses in New Zealand, it's everyone. And I think having an independent association that really genuinely engages its members around what do we need to do to be different and drive, you know, an agenda at the most senior level for me was super interesting and something I really wanted to be passionate about. I truly believe that a really incredible association like TUANZ, and there's many out there as well, can really drive change, and we're seeing that, right? So we've seen a lot of that in the last couple of years, definitely under your leadership, Craig, but also just within organisations. And I think sometimes organisations are quite insular in having an independent body that has a credibility to come in and say, actually, are you thinking about it this way? Which is a mahi we've been doing with our Māori Pacifica conversation we've been having, starts a dialogue and starts things, you know, we're seeding things and it's starting change. So for me, that is definitely the reason why. Influential association, and one that does great work.
Okay, let's finish up on a really broad, wide question. I mean, we've said this already, you're leading one of those iconic large New Zealand companies. You're a business leader. You know, what big ideas should a country like us focus on if we want to move up that global digital competitive ladder?
Yeah, definitely a couple. And I think most people would say, how do you commercialize and unlock things like AI and kind of emerging tech? I'd probably go the other way because I think most people talk about that. But for me, if we're going to move up the ladder, we need to have the talent in New Zealand to be able to do that simply, right? How do you move up the other ladder if you don't? And so I think I would love to see, you know, our minister, our government really take a lead around how we're building the skill sets across primary to university, particularly in STEM and AI. Like, where is it coming from? I'm not feeling it, and I have kids that are at school age, and I don't ever hear that narrative coming into what they're thinking about. So I think that's going to be a really critical thing for us. That unlocks a lot of things all the way through. And then the second thing is New Zealand is an incredible country. We are far from anywhere. We're an incredible start. I think we've proven that. We've got a real R&D mentality here. But how are we being positioned as a more green and sustainable tech company? So where is that coming from? And I think those two things together and really finding what is our unique value proposition to the world is one of those things I'd really love to see TUANZ influence, but also our government take a real leadership role on. I think we're very good at being insular as organizations. We've got amazing stuff that's happening here, but how do you craft it into a New Zealand narrative? And that's what I'd love to see.
Yeah, such a good answer. Thank you. Look, it's been a joy to speak to you. Have you got any last comments or thoughts you'd like to share from your top of the pillar?
Top of the pillar.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so many that we've covered a lot of things. I think a lot of different discussion points too, actually. But no, I would just say 2025, 2024 was a really tough year for Aotearoa, a really tough year for Kiwis and organisations. 2025 really needs to be a year that we can all thrive and grow, and supporting each other to get there. Networking, finding ways that we can do business better together and simplify things, I think is like the key thing that's top of mind for me anyway, as a business leader. But yeah, all the best everyone this year. Let's smash 2025.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, it's been a joy, as I said, a privilege to speak with you, Annaliese, taking time out of what's an incredibly busy role. Thanks everybody for however you've listened or watched this podcast, and it is available on our YouTube channel if you want to go back and see it. It's also available on any and every audio podcast app that you might have, including here in New Zealand, Rover and iHeartRadio. So once again, thank you, Annaliese, and ka kite.
Kia ora. Thanks for having me, Craig.